We are going to be ranking the mainline Pokemon games because as a YouTube creator, I like to put my opinion on the internet and have random strangers tear me to pieces. Just for the record, because this was at the end of a Twitch stream, I'm wearing 3 hats because Twitch chat made me put hats on, so I look like an idiot, more so than I normally do. Let's do it. The way that we're gonna rate these is that they're gonna be rated on how much I like the games. It's not based on like how good they are at being Nuzlocked and stuff. That'll be factored in, but it's just gonna be my overall enjoyment of the game, what I think about the games, and where they rank amongst each other. Also, disclosure, I genuinely love every single Pokemon game, so just because I put one at a low tier doesn't mean that I think it's like a trash game. I'm just doing it compared to everything. There's S, A, B, C, and F. We're gonna use all those tiers, okay? So just putting that out there. Let's roll. The start is gonna be Red and Blue. I don't know why it's in Blue and Red. So Red and Blue are pretty solid games for what they are. They're super glitchy. They're super old. They aren't perfect. There's some really weird balancing issues. You know, psychic types are really overdone. There's no special defense stat. It's just a special stat. They're kind of messes of games in that sense, but I have a genuine belief that you can either do something the best or you can do it first. And the fact that they did Pokemon first cannot be ignored. So I'm going to put them in a solid B tier. I mean, there's not really a difference between Red and Blue, so they're gonna go at B tier. Yellow version is really cool. I think it's a really cool gimmick to like match the anime. You get Pikachu. I think that Yellow is a unique playing style and perspective, but I don't think it makes it like much better than Black. I mean, Red or Blue. And I don't know if it's even better. So I'm just gonna put it right behind it. They're basically the same games, but they're solid. Really, really hard first gym because you get Pikachu against Onix and Geodude. But I really like that they changed some of the gym leaders, and it's actually a little bit harder than Red and Blue, if I remember correctly. All right, Gold and Silver, I don't have too much of like thoughts on. Most of my thoughts will be saved for Heart Gold and Soul Silver. From my understanding, they didn't really anticipate making a Generation 2, and so Gold and Silver are a little sloppy. It's sort of like tacked on addition to Gen 1. And when you think about that in the development of that context, it makes a lot of sense. So a lot of its flaws, like there's not a lot of ways to get the newer Pokemon. It's overly dependent on Kanto. All of that is at least kind of justifiable for Gold and Silver. But again, I think these are going to be solid B tier as well. I don't think they're as good as the first 2 games in terms of balancing. I don't think that their level curve is much better. If anything, it's worse. So there's still a lot of problems, and I don't really think they fixed too many of the problems from Generation 1. They introduced a lot of really cool stuff though. So they got eggs, and breeding was really cool. The day and night cycle, all that stuff is cool. So actually for that reason, maybe let's put them just a little bit above Red and Blue here. Good games. Crystal is better than those ones. You can be a girl. That's cool. And Suicune's a cool Pokemon. I like it. Also, headbutting is cool. Yeah, okay, here's where my bias starts to show a little bit. Ruby and Sapphire, and actually let's just put Emerald in them all together. They're not that different. These are all A tier games. I think these are really solidly well made. I think Generation 3 is where Pokemon really gets its stride in, and a lot of the things that start to define Pokemon are developed in Generation 3. There's a lot of really cool, new, interesting Pokemon introduced. The region is cool. The introduction of abilities, everything like that is really great. They don't age super well in my opinion because of the physical special split, but that's not really their fault. It's just sort of like where Pokemon was at the time. So yeah, these are A tier games. Emerald's a little bit better just for like difficulty. I really love these games, and these are the games that were seminal to my childhood. So a little bit of bias there. Man, when I was 10 or 11, I was plowing through these games all the time. Flygon is in Gen 3 too. Yeah, good point, good point. All right, Fire Red and Leaf Green, I think are good remakes, but they're really, really bland remakes. They like don't add that much. I don't know. They're fine. You know, they update the game so it's like they're actually playable, but I don't think they're that much better than any of the games that came before them. It's just that they're like newer, so they're a little more polished. So for that reason, it might not make sense, but I'm gonna put them in C tier. I really like playing these games. They're just like a little too easy. They're a little too vanilla and boring. Just compared to some of the other ones, not as great. Diamond and Pearl are also B tier. I think they are better than the previous couple generations, other than Generation 3, but they're a little wonky. I think their limited national dex is really damaging to it. There's just like a lot of Pokemon that are shoved into places like the Great Marsh and really late game stuff and like the Trophy Garden and everything like that, where they should be more spread out throughout the entire game. And a lot of the routes have the exact same Pokemon, and it's very, very frustrating. I think the encounter tables here are really weak, and it makes them not super fun to Nuzlocke either, or like repeatedly play. But I really like Generation 4 in general. Platinum is gonna break A tier. Platinum is a great game. It's just Diamond and Pearl, but they took more time to make them or something. I don't know why Platinum is so much better than Diamond and Pearl, like why most of the stuff in Platinum wasn't in Diamond and Pearl, but like Platinum is a phenomenal game. It's really fun to play. The encounter tables are much better. You can get all sorts of new Pokemon. The AI is somehow better in Platinum than it is in Diamond and Pearl. Cyrus is hard as hell. Great boss battles in Platinum. Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Here we go. I'm tempted to put them in F tier, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna put them in low C tier, which I'm sure is still gonna piss people off. But Heart Gold and Soul Silver had the ability to take everything that was wrong in Gen 2 and fix it, but they didn't. They just did the same thing, which is stupid. It doesn't make sense for them to know that they have more time to change these games and then not change them. The level curve is terrible in these games. The encounters are terrible. They're kind of boring in the middle, even though it's open world or whatever. It's really cool that you can walk with Pokemon. I don't want to take that away from anyone, and I'm sure I'll get comments about that. It is really cool that you can walk with any Pokemon in those games. That's really cool. I think that the aesthetic of these games is really cool. But like, it's just kind of a dull game in terms of replayability because there are very, very few Pokemon that you can actually catch. And the ones that you can catch, I think are personally pretty dull. And so are all the gym leaders. Like, none of it is particularly fun, but they look beautiful. Headbutting is still fun. There's a lot of cool things. I think the Pokeathlon is like one of the coolest side parts of any game, but I do think that the flaws of Heart Gold and Soul Silver really detract from their quality compared to some of the flaws of other Pokemon games. Just my opinion. Black and White, that's a tough one. Black and White, I'm gonna put in low A tier as well, I think. Black and White are really cool games. There is a bit of a downside because they cut everything from the previous generations. When they made Black and White, there is a little bit of a limited dex there, but I think the regional dex in Black and White is the most unique regional dex of any of the games because it's the only game that has just those Pokemon. And they did introduce a lot of them. I don't like a lot of the designs, but there are a lot of Pokemon that you can still choose from. I think the game flows really well. I like how you navigate through the region. The end I don't love. I don't love that there's like a final battle and it kind of makes it hard for Nuzlocking, like when you have to fight N and then immediately fight Ghetsis, and it's all very confusing, like what the level caps are and all of that stuff. So that's a little annoying. That's not really the game's fault. That's just like the way that Nuzlocking works. But these are really good games and I want to play them more. It's just that like because of that limited dex, there's not as many challenges that you can do in them. Black 2 and White 2. This is a pretty universally considered opinion here that these games are great, and I don't disagree. I think these games are phenomenal. I don't know if they're like the best games ever, even if I rank them at the top. There's still some flaws in them. There's still like a little bit of pacing at the end that's a little wonky. I don't care about the story in this game. I don't care about the story in any Pokemon game. And the fact that like this one is slightly less doesn't make me like these games anymore. I think everything else about the games is phenomenal though. The gyms are fun. They're kind of hard, some of them. There's a little bit at the end where it's kind of stupid that like Marlin only has 3 Pokemon, for example, but the mid game is actually pretty challenging in this generation. It introduces a lot of different things from Black and White that are different. The Team Plasma stuff, the fights are fun. There's a little too many boss fights at the end and that pacing kind of drags it, but like the Elite Four is pretty tough. Everything in these games are really, really well polished. It looks beautiful. I love the aesthetic. These are great, excellent games. Not perfect, but excellent games. So I'm gonna put them in S tier. X and Y. Okay. I have loved playing X and Y lately. I think X and Y, if they had better gym leaders, would be S tier games. I cannot put X and Y in S tier because the gyms are so easy. They are so easy. All the fights are insanely easy, not just because there's only 3 Pokemon in any given gym, but just like the teams are really dumb and bad. And maybe part of that is honestly because you get so many options of Pokemon to choose from in X and White that like you are guaranteed to have easy counters to the gyms. But that's one of the reasons that I really love X and Y is that the encounters are so cool. Like you can play this game over and over again and you can choose to use completely different teams and you would still have a very viable team. This is one of the first generations where it makes a lot of Pokemon viable by giving them better movesets and by having such a large regional dex. Really enjoy X and Y. I think they're beautiful games. I think they feel really unique. I love how they're like actually feel inspired by France in a way that a lot of the other generations are kind of just like nods to. Really love these games. I'm gonna put them in A tier. I think they belong here. I don't know for sure. But man, these games are fantastic. And if somebody just made a mod where all they did was change how difficult the gyms are and maybe skipped a couple boss battles and rival battles that are kind of boring and useless, these games would be S tier games. Alpha Sapphire and Omega Ruby. I haven't played them that much. I've only played them on cartridge back when they were first released. I really enjoyed them. They also are really great games. I want to give them S tier. But let's keep that sacred. And I haven't played them enough to fully figure out if they're S tier or not. So I'm gonna put them also in A tier. I'm gonna put them low A tier here, but I do wanna go and play these games a little bit more, and maybe my opinion will change on these, but I just don't have that much experience with them if I'm being honest. Similarly, Sun and Moon, I've only played once. I don't really care about these games. I think they're kind of dull. They're really tedious, really long. I don't like a lot of the Pokemon introduced in them. And while I think that the Totem challenge is unique and interesting and like a good ambitious spin, it just makes it kind of boring. I don't know. Like, I don't know why. They're in a way they're harder, but in another way they're also just more boring because you're just fighting one Pokemon and you have like 6 Pokemon to deal with it. It's just a little duller. I don't like the legendaries. I don't really like the region or the story either or anything. So I'm gonna put these in C tier. I don't know. Again, I don't hate these games. I loved playing them. I've loved playing all of these games, but I think compared to some of the other ones, they're just a little bit weaker. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, though, are pretty cool games. I've only played them the once. We did that on stream. It was really fun. It was insanely tedious because they are stupidly long, but they make up for that in being genuinely challenging vanilla games. So I'm gonna give them definitely higher than C. I don't think that they rise above B tier, if I'm being honest, but they are still really like, I admire the chutzpah of Game Freak for making a game that's actually this challenging. So yeah, definitely B tier games here. Let's go Eevee and let's go Pikachu. Man, I feel bad. I said I had to do an F tier, right? So these are going in F tier, but like, honestly, for what they are, they're pretty f***ing cute. And like, they are games for babies. So they made a game for babies, and it's a little unfair for me to be like, these games are for babies, F tier. But in terms of how much I like playing them and the replayability of them and stuff, they are just really boring and really easy. And it's kind of cool that they introduced some post-game stuff with like the master trainers and stuff. I think that's cool, but grinding and leveling up stuff in those games is really dull. And it's also super stupid that they took abilities away from Pokemon. Why? Are abilities that complex? No. So very frustrating games. They are good for what they are, but all Pokemon games are good in my opinion. So this is going to be an F tier for me. Sword and Shield. Man, F tier. No, I'm just kidding. Sword and Shield are really good games. I really like Sword and Shield. I'm gonna put them in A tier. Honestly, I think I'm gonna put them here. We got a lot of A tier Pokemon games here, but Sword and Shield are great games. I don't care. I've heard the criticisms and I just don't agree with them. There are some things that aren't great about these games. I do think the pacing, like a lot of Pokemon games, is a little off, especially in the middle, but the wild area is really cool. The new Pokemon introduced are actually interesting Pokemon. It's not a hard game if you Dynamax, but it is a very hard game if you don't Dynamax. And there's some pretty challenging stuff, and it's actually kind of an interesting region to go through. I think it looks beautiful. I don't think it looks like Breath of the Wild, but honestly, I don't really care. I think that the Pokemon are well realized. I think that the game, there's clearly a lot of thought that was put into it. And again, the encounter tables are phenomenal in this game. I can see myself playing this game over and over and over again. I also really like the idea of like the max raid dens and the EXP candies. Makes grinding a lot easier. So I really love these games. Sorry. All right. I think that's it. Oh yeah, I guess we don't have BDSP, huh? Fine. We can rank BDSP. BDSP I would put right here. Before Sun and Moon, after Fire Red and Leaf Green. I think those games have a lot of flaws, but I think they have a lot going for them as well. I really like what they upgraded to the game, or like what they added to the game and what they changed in the game, but I don't think they changed that much. And there was another opportunity there to fix a lot of the mistakes that Diamond and Pearl made, and they just didn't. Again, I don't think they're trash games. I think those games are really fun, and the Elite Four is genuinely one of the hardest Elite Fours in any Pokemon game, vanilla Pokemon game at least. They're cute, they're charming, they are challenging to an extent as long as you kind of have to play around certain things, but they're fun games and I really enjoyed them, but they are certainly not flawless, that's for sure. Certainly more flawed than many of the other games. So mid C tier. Let's see how Legends of Arceus shakes out. It'd be interesting to see where that plays. It's kind of the first mainline Pokemon game that is so different. So we'll see how that goes. Anyways, thanks for watching. Like, comment. I don't know, guys. Thanks. Oh, and let me know what other tier rankings you want me to do, okay? Might do them, or I might not. I don't know.